This video is basically tantamount to stream of consciousness, but I do think that it's something that's very important to talk about, which is the sort of state of goth and the goth subculture and what it means to be part of that and why it matters. To give you a little bit of context to my experience with goth, I found goth rock, goth music, and the subculture when I was a teenager. My sister was a goth. She's 6 years older than me, and I grew up, seeing her and her friends, and I didn't really understand the music element to it because I was too young and I didn't really listen to the music at that point. But I always saw them, and my sister and her friends were like ethereal vampires to me. I always just admired how beautiful they were and how cool they were. So I think that was my first real seeing goths in the wild moment. But as I got older and became a teenager, I found the music, before I really understood that it was connected to that aesthetic, I found bands like Susie and the Banshees, Joy Division, Bauhaus, Sisters of Mercy, all the classics. And they really spoke to me. And there was just something so strange and unique and different about those bands. And they were kind of hard to find back in the early 2000s. And beyond that, I think nowadays it's great that you can go out and just look online and find every single goth band, no matter how obscure, ever known to mankind. You will find them somewhere on the internet. But back in those days, you couldn't just Google goth bands or whatever. You had to know a guy. You had to know somebody. You had to know a record store clerk. You had to know a friend that was into it. Somebody had to sort of introduce this world to you and educate you and teach you, more and more of it. There were things like internet forums at the time where you could kind of discover by talking to people and discourse. There was a bit of gatekeeping around that, and it wasn't always the easiest people to talk to. I realized through time and sort of educating myself that this music is goth music and these are goth people. And I think at that time I was also watching a ton of really cult horror movies, and a lot of those horror movies got me into it. Night of the Demons, The Hunger, that kind of stuff. So as I got a bit older and I moved out of my parents' house, I had some friends that would take me from Athens to Atlanta to goth nights at the Masquerade, at the Old Wave night, which was, it was a lot of 80s new wave and post-punk, but they would play a lot of goth music as well. It was known as the Goth Night in Atlanta. And that was my first real interactions with goth as a scene and as a subculture and as a community. And it was really, really fulfilling because I had only ever interacted with goth kind of in the comfort of my bedroom in very rural Georgia in the middle of nowhere. So it was incredible to find people that were into the same things that I was into and, had thoughts about life and everything that were similar to the way that I thought about things. Back then, goth was very precious. There was something really unique and just rare about it. And you felt it in every interaction, whether it was listening to a new record or an old record, or going to a goth night, or going to, some cult horror movie, or seeing Rocky Horror, or whatever. Any interaction you had with the scene back then felt unique and special and wonderful. And I think that's where I feel we've lost a lot of that. And I think that's happened with a lot of things in life, not just the goth subculture. I think modern society and being inundated with information on social media and the internet has kind of made us hyper aware of everything at all times. But I still think that we have this ability to have really wonderful experiences within the goth subculture, and I have those experiences regularly, but essentially none of it, not any of it, happens online. It all happens in person. I DJ our local goth night here in Athens. I moved back to Athens in 2016 after being away for years, and I love DJing our goth night. We just hit 10 years here in Athens, and we've built a pretty amazing scene, and it's full of really interesting people. It's a very diverse, broad scene. We have young people and older people. We have every color, creed, and ethnicity involved in this scene, and it's really, really satisfying to see like a more diverse scene because it wasn't always like that. But nowadays, I think we have this really weird inflection point of the whole subculture where it has become a fashion associated fad. It has become a fetishized caricature. It's not uncommon to see in social media feeds nowadays hypersexualized videos of women and femme presenting people that don't really have any bearing on the culture or the music. It's just sort of, again, this caricature of a person meant to gain followers or gain clout online or whatever. Ability and that's not to say you can't have sexuality involved in your interaction with the subculture. I just don't think that it should be the only thing that you have to offer to that subculture. So very regularly I get asked, and it's probably because of my like moniker as Goth Dad based on my old social media videos. A lot of people ask me, what's your best advice for people getting into the scene, or what's your advice if you're interested in this world? And I tell people most often, stop paying attention to the online world of this. Get off of TikTok and Instagram and YouTube. Stop watching this video right now and go to your goth night. Go to the band that's touring. Go do the meetup in the cemetery or at the coffee shop or whatever. Go meet people in person. Make friends. Build those bonds. Make that scene real. Because the only thing worth doing in the goth subculture is with other people. I realize the extreme irony of all of this with me sitting here in my studio room completely alone, fully decked out in makeup. It is best interacted with other people in person. The other thing that I think most people ask me about is, what is your take on what is goth? For me, it mostly has to do with music, because that is the portal and conduit for all of the subculture to exist. We all celebrate this music because it's a broad umbrella of different subgenres that fit into it, and they're all different and unique and wonderful in their own way, but they all meet the metal of this broader context, which is darkness and looking unflinchingly at darker things like mortality, evil, but also understanding things like justice, fighting for what's right, being different, advocating for those that are marginalized and different. These are all themes that fit within the context. So for me, it is musical mostly, but there are many aspects that fit. It is a subculture. So film, television, comics, books, etc. There's so many things that sort of fit into that umbrella as well. And then the third thing I think most people ask me about as far as my opinions or my advice is what I think about goth being political or not. And I want to make this very clear. This is based in many, many years of reading books. I've read many of these books back here are about the goth subculture, goth bands, and the scene and the history therein. And I can tell you without any hesitation that it is political, but it might not be in the way that you think it is. So it's not political in the way that you have to agree with this party versus this party. But what I can tell you is that there are certain parties that espouse ideology that is completely incompatible with the existence of the subculture, i.e. MAGA Republicans. They want a very homogenous, very whitewashed version of reality to be the ideal thing. And while you might have a lot of grifters online tell you that you can do this and be Republican, those are people that don't interact, A, probably much at all with their scene, and B, with Republicans or conservatives appearing like this. They don't do it, I guarantee you. But I also noticed that a lot of those people have no comprehension, understanding, or even like goth music or the subculture. They just want to have a dark aesthetic. And you know what? That's fine. You can look however you want. But you can't show up to a scene in a subculture that is built by and for very often queer people or marginalized people, people of color, communities of people that have been disenfranchised by white Christian nationalism and the status quo of things, and expect to be welcomed with open arms. It's completely insane, and it's pretty distasteful and tacky, in my opinion. At the end of the day, all this stuff is just my opinion, and I think you're going to have a very different version of the way you process this information and this subculture yourself, and that's fine. Life is way too short and complicated and confusing and frustrating, especially if you live in this stupid country, to be worried about the eaches of every little facet of what makes something goth, or whether you belong in a culture or whatever. At the end of the day, the only thing that truly matters is building community, making real friends, building a scene that actually stands for something and has ethics and coda and metal, and isn't going to allow shitty people to come in and appropriate that space, and just having fun. This should be fun. You should not be constantly in a state of anxiety over whether you're goth or not enough. It's really, really, really silly to do any of this if all you're going to do is be anxious about it. Have a good time, be weird, and the rest is cookies and peanuts. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this little rant of mine. Like, follow, and subscribe. I don't know, whatever. I'm new to YouTube stuff, and I feel like an idiot doing any of this, but I'll keep saying stuff and making videos and being your internet goth dad, I guess. Comment down below and let me know what kind of videos you would like me to talk about or make or whatever. Or I'll just sit here and stare at you doe-eyed for 5 minutes. I'm not gonna do that. Alright, anyway, take care of yourself, be kind to each other, and as always, stay strange!